Hey everyone, sorry for the delay. Had a midterm recently and occupied my time quite a bit for studying, but I figured we could jump right back into the Box2D lights and kind of mess around with what we had going from the previous two videos. In this video, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with the point lights and cone lights, and honestly, there isn't really too much to know or too much to learn in this case. A lot of the lights have similar structures. The only one that's kind of harder to understand is the chain light, and I will be kind of covering that one separately and giving some stronger examples of that one as it can be a little weird. Um, but for the most part, creating a point light and creating a cone light is almost one-to-one exactly the same. And you'll notice these methods here, they look so similar that it's really easy to get going with them. And the cone light has a lot of versatility and they're really great to use. So first things first, I want to touch back on the point light just for those who maybe missed the previous video but still got the ray handler one. Um, you'll notice I'm creating a point light object, and this is in a light builder class that I have just in my utilities folder. Just some static methods that I can call universally in my game. It'll return a point light object, and to create a point light, you need a ray handler. The amount of rays that will be casted from the center point of the light, and that's important to know. The kind of normal amount of rays to use is anywhere between like 20 to 200. Any more than that, and you're starting to get a little more heavy on the calculations. So be wary of that. The more you use, the harder the game is gonna, or the longer the game is gonna take to process those lights. And while you won't necessarily have a lot of lights, if you do, and a lot of those have like over 200 or like around 500 or 1,000 rays, it's just kind of overboard. It's not necessary. You can fine tune the lights to be pretty high up in the ray count, but it's really not necessary for the effect you're trying to get. I normally like to stick between 100 to 200. So then you have your color of the light that you want the light to shine as, the distance from the center point, and that is in Box2D units, not pixels, so be wary of that. Box2D light still works in Box2D meter units. So then you have the X and Y, and in this case, because I'm attaching this light to a body, I just set them to 0 because when you attach a light to a body, the X and Y, the initial X and Y you give it, has really no influence on where the light's going to be because the light just keeps updating according to where the body is. So that's just a simple run through of getting a point light set up. So once you pass it to the ray handler, the light is essentially created at that point. You're ready to move on. It's in your Box2D world and you're good to go. So now to address some of these other methods that I have here, you'll notice I have setSoftness Length, and what that does is it allows you to kind of set how much of the light bleeds into other bodies. And just to demonstrate that real quick, I'm using the same class I was from the previous two videos, where I have a body surrounded by like 4 walls. So you'll notice here I have this light and it's being blocked by this wall. You'll notice how the light doesn't really intersect the object that much. So let's turn this off to see what the default softness length looks like. Okay, now you'll notice it bleeds into the object a lot. So the thinner that object is, the more it's going to bleed through it, or that's just the effect you'll kind of observe. So normally I like to set that to 0. Then you get a sharper light against blocking bodies. So then you have this attachtobody method, which is pretty handy. It attaches the light to any Box2D body you pass it to, or pass to it, and it'll update the X and Y accordingly. And then you have this set xray method, which is new, and I haven't shown this in the previous videos. This one's pretty straightforward. if you set it to true, and this is something you can set off and on. I'll demo that real quick after I show you what X-ray does. You'll notice that the light just shines through any object. It's just passing through anything. Essentially X-ray, so seeing through stuff. So that should be pretty easy to understand, I'm assuming. So to kind of see some functionality you can get from your point lights, the reason I pass the point light object back and save a reference to it is so I can change stuff on the fly, like in my game if I do a certain control. I'll just give an example real quick. Is key just pressed? We'll just make that space for now. So we have a reference, PL, to that point light we made, and I think I'm just going to set the distance. So PL dot get distance, and you can get all the variables to the light too, of course, just as most other objects. So PL dot get distance plus equal or plus 0.01 f. So that's adding 1.01 meter to the light distance anytime I press space. So let's go back in. That's kind of how you can get some functionality out of your lights. So anytime I press space, maybe that's just way too small. I can see it kind of increasing, but set 0.1, and you know what? I'm just going to make that key pressed, and I'll actually set that to 0.5 then if it's key pressed. So here we go, holding space, 3, 2, 1. Now you can see the lights really getting bright, and you'll notice it's really bright in the center here. But yeah, so that's how you kind of get functionality out of your lights. You can change all sorts of things like this. So what would be, I wonder what a good test might be. PL.get soft shadow length plus 0.05. I wonder what that would look like. Apologies if this is boring or anything. It's just always fun to mess around with this stuff. So yeah, now you'll notice like there's a really weird effect you can get from this. So when you set the softness length and you keep increasing it and increasing it, you can actually get like a magnifying glass effect, which is pretty cool. I have to say, I honestly did not expect that to happen. And I'm already starting to think of some pretty interesting ideas that I could use that for. Oh wow. I really like that. That's pretty interesting. So yeah, mess around with setting that softness length. That's pretty cool stuff you can get. Just keep increasing it and it'll just keep shining out. So okay, well that's enough messing around with that. Let's move on to the cone light. So if you can kind of see here, there's just the X and Y, and I have another method that has it sets the X and Y but not to a body. So that's just for static lights. And down here at the cone light, you got the same kind of setup, set softness length, attached body, set X-ray, the same kind of stuff. But you get some new methods here. You'll notice I have a float dir and float cone. This is my direction that I want the light to point, and the cone is how much I want the light, or the radius that I want the light to be casted out. So to give a quick example before I start talking about this, I'm going to erase that reference because that's a point light, and I'm going to create a cone light, and I'm going to pass it some more variables. So player.get angle, so that'll give me the player's initial starting angle, which is 0, and then I'll also give it 30 degrees. That is in degrees, not radians or anything else, so just be aware of that. And now you'll notice that it's not shining 360 degrees around the player like the point light, but it's actually a controlled 30-degree cone effect that we get here. Um, it's essentially like a flashlight kind of light, or a lamp, like a hanging lamp or something. They're pretty nice to mess around with. But there's also this nice extra feature you get when you attach it to a body. So when you attach a cone light to a body, if the body can rotate, you'll notice that the light also follows that initial angle of rotation and will maintain a rotation relative to the body you attach the light to, which is pretty cool. That's essentially a free feature that you get just for attaching it to a body, and I have to say that's pretty nice because I know I don't want to go through the math of doing the angular swinging of a light. So nice stuff here, cone light. So let's get into explaining some of the code that we have. So down here, I pass an array handler, a body, color, distance, direction, and cone. The only thing that's different is the direction and cone compared to our cone or our point light. And same thing goes for the constructor, array handler, how many rays you want, color, distance from the center point, x, y, and the direction that you want the light to point at, and the degree of, or the spanning degree of how wide the light is. And that can go all the way up through to 360 degrees. So you get the full range, and you can make it work like a point light anyway. So you also have the setSoftness length, same kind of thing. I believe all the lights have this property. Attached to body, same thing. And set xray will do the same thing as in the point light. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to join this as one video, because they're both very similar. But let's kind of demonstrate a little feature here. I'm going to create a private cone light CL, and just to mess around a little bit again, because I think we're kind of towards the end of understanding how to create lights. It's fairly simple. The array handler does so much of the work for us. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's really enjoyable just to see what these lights can do. So we're going to get that reference to the C angle, or the cone light, and set cone degree, cl.get cone degree. And you know what? I think we're going to use an interpolation. So plus, so point, what would that be? You know what? I actually forgot this. I don't know how I could forget that. Yeah, so 1 minus, yeah, okay. So 0.5 minus cl.get cone degree times 0.1f. Let's create a simple private float. C cone equals 0f, and I'll actually make this cone plus equals 2, or plus equals 0.5f. Alright, don't code like this. This is awful. This is just for a demonstration. I just want to kind of see what it does, and so you guys can kind of see with messing around with this stuff. So press space. Oh, okay. Well, that made it just close the light. So let's actually get that subtracting. That's just way too fast. Go 0. Man, okay, well that just increases really fast. But you can kind of see how you can have an expanding light and whatnot and change that cone degree in different ways. So with that, I hope you enjoyed some of the interesting demonstrations I had presented today, and also don't forget to mess with that softness light. Apparently you can get some pretty cool magnification effects on some certain bodies which I actually wasn't even aware of until I did this video. So I hope you enjoyed learning about cone lights and point lights, and as usual, like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Thank you.